waiting for this moment to start the old Masechta, so I'm in now 100% in Yerushalmi.
Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are starting a new Masechta, Masechtas Demai. We are learning Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi Demai, Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph, in the dafim that we are using as it was organized by the Ois Vahada. We start with Daf Aleph, and the Masechtas Demai in our Gemara will have a total of Ayin, Zayin, Dafim. Now, the word Demai, which is the name of the Masechta, we are already in our third Masechta in the Yerushalmi. For those who are joining us right now, we're going to have in this Masechta, like we had in Peah, we're going to have the oldish Mefaidish, which is the Rash Sadilio. We're going to have the Maraf Fulda, which is in the place of Rashi in the Bavli. And here we're going to have the Pnei Moshe, remembering that the Pnei Moshe is the only Mefaidish that has commentary on the entire Talmud Yerushalmi as we have it. The word Demai itself, quoting from the Rash Sadilio, which is under the Gemara on the right and left side. I'm just reading. It's the middle of the column. Yesh mefarshim. The word Demai means din mai. What is the din? Meaning, I have a doubt of what is. What's the doubt? As we'll explain, Safik Mu'usar, Safik Eina Mu'usar. There's a doubt whether the product, the produce that we have in front of us, is properly tithed or not. That's one way of interpreting the word dimai, like da mai, vas idas, what is this? And the yesh mefarshim, that the mai, even though it's spelled with an aleph, should be understood as daled mem ayin, is spelled out with an ayin, and the word dema means a mixture, meduma. Guys, the word meduma, which is a word that we will use a lot when chulin and truma gets mixed together, that there's a mix-up. Now, I'll explain better what the mix-up is. Ubahagdama, the following. First of all, when it comes to tithing, which is the word in English of maisnis, the chiyuv of maisnis, goes way beyond the topic of the previous Masechta, which was Matnas Aniyim, beginning with Peah. We learned about Leket, we learned about Shikha, we learned about Maiser Ani. All of these mitzvahs, which are awesome, are mitzvahs on the person to give, to leave for the poor, but the item that's left or given to the poor has no kedusha at all. That's not the case when we are going to be learning our sugya, our topic of Demai, and that is that produce, we'll see for sure that includes the 5 grains, wheat, barley, spelt, rye, and oats. How much of other items does it include is a 3-way machlekes rishonim that we'll speak out another time. But produce in its natural state is called tevel. Guys, the word tevel means toiv loy. It's nish good. Nish good, not only because some of it has to go to the poor. And by the way, some of it does have to go to the poor in certain years. But it's more than that. There are items in here that have a level of kedusha that does not allow a non-kohen to consume of it. And prior to the separating of these maisres, tevel is prohibited to be consumed with the penalty that if one does so, they're chayiv misa b'idei shamayim. That's a whole different category. That's much more serious. Versus the previous Masechta, where even when a person violated, God forbid, the commandments and did not leave Peah, and if the person were to consume the produce of his field, he won't be chayiv misa b'idei shamayim. Okay, now, what does need to be separated? So once the product reached at the level of Gemar Melacha, it's a ready product, either ready to be sold or one brought it into the house, the Iyas Pnei Habayis in the proper way, either Meruach or the Iyas Pnei Habayis, then the right order of separating in English, the tithings, the maisres, would be, number one, the person has to separate Truma Gedoyla. Midoiraisa, there is no minimum amount. The Chachamim gave us either the average who would give 2%, 1 out of 50, or the stingy that would give 1 out of 60, or the generous that would give 1 from 40. After the Truma Gedoyla separated, and that is designated to be given to the Kohen, you have to then separate Meiser Rishon from the remaining 10%. So if I start out, let's say my mashal of 100 apples, 2 apples will go to the kohen. Now you have 98 apples. From the 98 apples, you separate from the 98 10%, which is 9.8 apples, and that is designated to be given to the Levi. Truma Gedoyla, my sedition is separated in all of the 6 years from the 7-year cycle. Obviously, Shemitah, when the product is Hefker does not need to be tithed at all. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Truma Gedoyla, my sedition. You're not done yet. Afterwards, there is another separation that has to happen. However, this other separation will depend on what year of the Shemitah cycle are you standing in. Year number 1 and year number 2, after the Ma'aser Rishon, you separate Ma'aser Sheni. Ma'aser Sheni also has a level of Kedusha in it. Ma'aser Rishon is a machlekes Tanoim. We paskin that Ma'aser Rishon is very much like the gifts to the poor, meaning it has to go to the Levi, but it has no entrance in Kedusha. If the Levi wants to share it with the Yisrael, he could. If he wants to sell it to a Yisrael, he could, even though it's a machlokes tanoim, but that's the way we paskin. Ma'aser Sheni is already holy, not on the level of Truma. It could be eaten. It's to be eaten by its original owner, but however, it has to be eaten only in Yerushalmi HaKodesh. And if the person is unable or unwilling to take it to Yerushalayim, there is the concept of pidyon, your poida, Ma'aser Sheni. If the owner is doing it, he has to add a choimish. The money has to be taken to Yerushalayim, and they only be spent on food items. That is only on the 1st and 2nd year. On the 3rd year, in the place of Ma'aser Sheni, you have to separate Ma'aser Ani, which was actually some of what we learned in the previous Masechta. So in the Shemitah 7-year cycle, there are 2 mini cycles. The first one is year 1, 2, 3, and the other one is 4, 5, 6. Mini cycles because they alternate, always Truma Gedoyla, always Ma'aser Rishon, either Ma'aser Sheni or Ma'aser Ani. 2 of the 3 mini cycle Ma'aser Sheni, and the 3rd year and the 6th year is going to be Ma'aser Ani. Okay, Atkan is the obligation of separating tithings, Ma'aseres, which also includes the word Truma Gedoyla. And now, as our words of introduction, we read a few words in the Rasharilio as the Hagdama. We're going to read the Pnei Moshe. Yes, I know we did not yet begin, but this Pnei Moshe is Gavaldik because it clarifies the issue of the Mai. Now, one more, a brief. A Jew is a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. Okay. Having said that, and that's the Pnimius, on a more external level, on a behavioral level, Chazal categorized the Jewish people into 2 groups. Chaver am haaretz, in the plural, chaverim am haratzim. A chaver refers to someone who was knowledgeable and meticulous in the observance of all of the commandments, and we are focusing specifically both on the laws of purity and impurity, tum and tara, and on the laws of ma'aseres, of properly separating all of the tithings. The chaver was meticulous and kept it. The am haaretz was lax, partially because of lack of knowledge, partially because of the lack of appreciation of the importance of it. And during the times of the 2nd Beis HaMikdash, when Yochanan was the Kohen Gadol, they realized that a miut hamatzui, which means a minority, which biblically we are not to be concerned with minorities, but it was a significant minority, and the Chachamim midrabanan saw that there is a large minority of Jews that separate only some of the Ma'aseres, but not all of the Ma'aseres. It's important to note this detail as we begin the Masechta. It wasn't that the Amaratzim or a minority of the Maratzim did not separate any of it. That's not what happened. As we'll read the Pnei Moshe, Truma Gedoyla, everyone separated. With the knowledge that prior to separating Truma Gedoyla, Tevel, Toiv Loi, if you were to eat it, you're going to be Chayv Misa B'dei Shamayim. Everyone understood the seriousness of it, and therefore everyone separated Truma Gedoyla. From there on, there were people that were lax, which means that they did not separate Ma'aser Rishon, even though Be'emes, from the Ma'aser Rishon, the Levi has to separate from it Ma'aser Min HaMa'aser, which becomes like Truma, which means that Be'emes, if one did not separate Ma'aser Rishon, you're still going to be Chayv Misa B'dei Shamayim for eating the remainder, because there's Truma in it. Not direct, there is the Truma of the Ma'aser. People, the Amaratzim did not know that. They thought that if they Bechlal won't separate Meiser Rishon, then there's no obligation to separate Meiser Minha Meiser. There is no Meiser. And therefore they resolved the Truma. That was a mistake. That was a mistake of ignorance. So Meiser Rishon, most of them did, but there was a Miut Hamatzui that did not. Now, what does that mean? Chachamim says when you buy produce from an Amma Aretz, we are calling this produce Dimai, Do-mai, what is it? Or Dimua, it's a mixture. There is Truma in it. They all separated Truma Gedoyla? Yeah, but they thought that since they didn't separate Meiser Rishon, there was no issue with Meiser Minha Meiser, there might be Truma in it. What Truma? The Truma of the Meiser. Now you have to understand one final thing before we read the Pnei Moshe, which is that I know the Chachamim, of course, they have the right to be more machmir than the Torah. But nevertheless, even when they were more machmir, they were not more machmir the way it sounds. It sounds like since a miut hamatzui did not separate anything after Truma Gedoyla, so now the chaver who buys peiros from the Am Haaretz, he has to separate Meiser Rishon from it, Meiser Mina Meiser, Meiser Sheni, or Meiser Ani. Not exact. Yes, but no. What's that yes or no? There are two dinim. There's a din of me being obligated to separate what needs to be separated, to make sure that that which remains is clear, free and clear. And then there is another step of giving the item that I separated to its designated recipient. Giving it to them has a din of there's kedusha in there, like by truma, or like by meiser men ha-meiser. It's holy, it's truma. A non-kohen, even a Levi, truma, even a Levi cannot eat. But then there is the financial part of it, the dinamaminus of it, that they have to receive it. Even when the Chachamim made the takana that demai has to be partially retithed, some of what you need to do is only to separate and not to give it. Because when it comes to giving it, you argue, by mamen, I'm not going to explain this right now because I want to speak out the introduction and there's a small daf, we'll be fine. But aside of that, I separated, let's say, Meiser Ani. Maybe the original owner gave Meiser Ani. So the Chachamim told me that, maybe he did not. So there's a separation, but you don't have to give it. As far as giving it is concerned, you can eat it. Don't forget, Meiser Ani has no Kedusha. Like we just spoke out. The Ani can give it to me once he gets it. Same thing with Meiser Rishon. Meiser Rishon has no Kedusha. I separate the Meiser Rishon, not to give it to the Levi. I separate Meiser Rishon to have something from which to separate Meiser Min HaMeiser. That I give to the Kohen. The Meiser Rishon itself, I get to keep. Meiser Sheni, I separate, and I have to take to Yerushalmi. I can't say Meiser Mechaveri Olavaraya because Meiser Sheni has Kedusha. The moment there's a Kedusha aspect involved, that is where we're machmer to go all the way to the end. Let's read this in the Pnei Moshe. Hakalin Shabbatamai. I'm going to touch the word Hakalin in a moment, but we're still in the words of our introduction. So first of all, the Pnei Moshe is only bringing down the first interpretation of the Rash Sirilio. The Mai is a composite of two words. Da Mai. What is this? Meaning there's a doubt. Meaning, Zeo, what are we referring to? Tvua is referring to the 5 grains. Bahapeiros, let's go, that at least olives and grapes are biblically considered tevel prior to tithing. And no matter which one of the 3 shittas rishonim you will hold regarding what needs to be tithed in the Holy Land, l'kula alma midrabanan, not only all peiros need to be tithed. There are 3 prerequisites that we'll cover later, but even the vegetables have to be tithed. Even the vegetables that are perishable vegetables. Because the Mishnah that we had in Peah Daf Yud Beis that tells us the 5 prerequisites for something to be obligated in Peah leaving by Meisers, it's only 3 of the 5. We're going to speak all that as we learned in the 7. So he's saying, Tfu and Peiros, Hanikachim that were bought from an Am Haaretz, She'enam Ne'emanim that are not believed that they properly separated all of the Meisers. So V'chaver Halakech Mehem, this is what needs to happen. This is an important Pnei Moshe. Truma does not need to be separated. The Am Haaretz did it. He has to be mafresh Trumas Meiser or Meiser Sheni if it's the year of Meiser Sheni. But when he's saying to separate, right? Actually, what does he mean? For me to separate Trumas Meiser, I got to separate my sedition. But what the Pnei Moshe means is that it's not something that I'm separating and giving to the Levi. The Meiser Ani I won't give to the Ani. What will I actually separate and give? Two things: Trumas Meiser, and then I will have to have the Meiser Sheni designated to be eaten or to be redeemed to be eaten in Yerushalmi. Avol Truma Gedoyla, says the Pnei Moshe, Lo Nechshet Lama Aretz Olel. Why? Lefi Shehiba Abin Misa. People understood from the penalty. It's not that people did it Shaloi L'Shem Shamayim. From the penalty, you understand the importance of it. Another reason why everyone would separate Truma Gedoyla is because even though de facto people would separate, generally, like we said, one of 40, one of 50, one of 60, but people also knew that Midairaisa, even one little kernel is a proper separation for a pile of 1,000 tons. So why wouldn't someone do a mitzvah if it's so financially unburdensome? And therefore, the hakol is on him. Now, I know the words of the Pnei Moshe, you don't have to separate it. We're going to learn later in the Masechta. It means you don't have to give it. Okay. The owner can tell the lady or to the ani, which are coming to take the maisvus, have raya. Well, bring a proof, and then I'll give it to you. You have the right to say that. Again, not only because the Roiv separated everything, because by money, even when you're going against the Roiv, we go by a whole different rules that the Muchza gets to keep it and the onus of proof is on the Moitz. Because that is where they were concerned. So what do you do? By the way, Trumas Meiser is 1% from what you have, because it's 10% of 10%, which is 1%. You have to actually give it. You have to separate it. First of all, that may not be eaten betuma. And that has to be done. Okay, we'll stop over here. So that's what the Mai is. So when we're going to say for the next 77 daf that the Mai, which is produce that you bought from an Amma Aretz, it has to be tied, it doesn't mean to separate all the Trumos Omaisis. We just clarified what it actually means is much less than people think, but you have to do that midrabban. One final Hagdama thought before I speak out the Mishnah and the Gemara by heart, and then we'll read it inside, is like this. Guys, this is very important. This is a bigger question than just the Mai, but it's applicable to the Mai, as the Asfen Doiraisa speaks out the Negei of the Mai. There are certain rabbinic rules that once they enacted the rule, like Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galis, it began because there was a doubt. Nowadays, B'Hashgacha Pratzis, just to point out that we're learning this at the end of the month of Iyar, Tavshin Pei Daled, we're mamish in the heart of Kiddush HaChodesh. So we're learning about the doubts of when Rosh Chodesh was, and then they fixed the calendar after the times of Abaye and Rava by Hillel, not Hillel, Hazak and Hillel, we call Hillel Makotin, or just Hillel. So think about it, guys. There used to be a doubt when the first day Yom Tov is. Nowadays, there's no more doubt. Now we have a fixed calendar. Everyone knows when Tezvav Nisan is. Nevertheless, since during the time of the doubt, because of the doubt, we behaved a certain way, which is we kept 2 days Yom Tov. When you are more than 10 days travel away from 14 days, 10 days, 11 days from the base and from Yerushalmi HaKodesh. So even though there's no doubt, we still have to keep 2 days Yom Tov. Va'ad kedei kach, we make a bracha when we make Kiddush. It's a big thing. So is Pshat Demai that since during the times of Yerushalmi and Kohen Gadol, and they had this doubt, takanata al pidin Torah, you would go after the Roiv. The Chachamim says we're not going after the Roiv, we're going after the Miyut Hamatzu. And you have to separate these details that we read in the Pnei Moshe. Once they made the takana, even if I know for sure that this Am Ha'aretz or this produce was tithe, I know I saw it. Like until what point? Oh, well, the Chachamim says you buy it from an Am Ha'aretz, the Mai, or it's not that type of takana. The Chachamim are telling you, since there is a doubt, be machmer, even though normally midoiraisa you can go after the roiv. Be machmer by truma by meiser and hameiser. Be machmer by meiser shein. But what were to happen if I don't have a doubt? Maybe if I don't have a doubt, then I'm not bound by the din of the Mai. Like by Chol of Yisrael, the Machloikas Achroin. What happens now if you know There was no Yisrael Royeyu, but you know that the guy has a cow farm. Is it a takanas chachamim the way we paskin? And no matter what you know, if you didn't have a Yisrael overseeing it, that's chalav stam. Or no, it's because there is a doubt, and if I don't have a doubt, I'll be allowed to eat it. We're going to have that shmuz throughout the beginning of the Mai. You're going to see certain sugyas, certain ways of approaching what type of takana this was. Now, these are words of Hagdama for the din of the Mai. What we're going to have in this Mishnah, which is amazing, the way Rabbeinu HaKadosh decides to be Mesaded, in contrast to Rambam that we are, God willing, more familiar with, at least by now, and that is like this, that Rambam, when he begins with the din of Torah Shabbat Peh, he'll give the Hagdama written inside. He'll tell you what the Mai is. This is what the Mai is. This is what you need to do. And then he'll go into exceptions. Look at Rabbeinu HaKadosh. He began with the exception. Means Rabbi is talking to people wanting us to know this Baal Peh. Even when he wrote it down, it remains like, you have to know what the Mai is. We read in the Pnei Moshe. What do you need to do? He begins the Masechta by saying, Hakalin Sheba the Mai. The following items are items in which will be kal or makel or lenient. And we will say that you don't have to separate anything, even though you bought it from the Amaretz. What will be the premise of all of these exceptions that the Mishnah will give? That these are products that are very insignificant in value. Most people don't cultivate them. They're meaning something that's not nishmar. We're going to get to that later. Just this word. Hefker is exempt from ISIS. The reason why produce of the Shemitah year is exempt because it's hefker lakol by God. If there is a certain type of, we'll see, again, some of these items might only be mechuyev to begin with midrabanan. So be it. Because there is a machlokes how much beyond tfuah is chayev midorais. It doesn't make a difference. Midrabanan, you have to separate maisros from all fruits that grow in Eretz Yisrael. Maybe even doirais. So if they are so insignificant that they're not cultivated, so they have a din of hefker. And of hefker, it doesn't have to be tight at all. So the Mishnah is going to go through all of these exception cases that were very lenient, that you don't have to separate it. The question will be, is it so hefker? Because it's so not chashuv, which will be the way Rabbi Yechanan understands the Mishnah. Really, these items, forget about the Mai. What happens if you saw them grow out of the ground? You know no one tithed it. Vadai. You also don't have to separate maises because it has a din of hefker, which is the case. That is something that has a status of hefker doesn't have to be tithed at all.
What if you're honest?
Our Mishnah is Masechtas Demai Yishleim. I'm giving you the whole off by heart. So therefore, since the next Mishnah will be speaking about Yonik Din of Demai, it's included here, but really our Mishnah goes beyond Demai. Even Vadai, Tevel also don't have to have anything separated because they're so insignificant. So that the Torah's paskening that unless we know otherwise, the owner considers them hefker. It's hefker. Or the Shlakish will learn the Mishnah. No, this is a leniency. Only b'negei of the mind. And the leniency will be, listen to these words, not because this produce is hefker. Since it's so insignificant, why wouldn't the owner, the Amaretz, separate all of the maisves? What's the nisoyin of separating maisves? More for the Levi, less for me. More for the ani, less for me. But if that which is becoming less for me, I don't consider so significant, I'll do it. That's the machlokes Rabbi Yechanan and Shlakish, which is huge, beautiful. That's the whole daf. Now we'll read it inside. Okay.
We're not saying that they're not doing it because they don't know to do it. We're saying they're probably not doing it because of the financial burden.
We're saying that the laxity general of Amaratzim, both by Tum and Tara and by Trumas U'Maisros, comes from a double, a two-sided coin. A certain lack of knowledge, and together with the lack of knowledge, because of lack of knowledge, there's a certain laxity. There's a certain, it's not that significant. When people say something is not that significant, all of us, let's take this not out of the Eibishter's mitzvahs, which, how can it not be significant? But in life, there are shades of significance. And in my life, certain things that I consider less significant, I'm not so careful in. All right? So they said that you can't drive over 55. Are you going to drive 58? It depends how you approach it. Are you going to drive 150? No. Like Truma Gedoyla, you're going to separate. Oh, that's already dangerous. That I already acknowledge is dangerous. But the other, I'm going 80. In my Honda, that's already safe. That's a shot. Okay. Says the Mishnah. Hakalin shabadamai. It's we are beginning with an exception. Like me'emus like koyin neshama ba'arvin. Same thing. First, tell me that there is something called Shema. Then tell me what it is. Then tell me you have to read it twice a day. And then tell me when you read it. Like Rabbi does it. He begins in the middle. Hakalin shabadamai are the following. He's going to give 8 items. Shisin. Shisin is a certain species of wild figs. Rimin is a berry-like fruit. The caveman is going to be so happy and busy. It's called jujube. It sounds to me Persian, even in English. Uzradin is azarol, shkoyach. Okay, so b'nai shuach, guys, b'nai shech, we know, is a species of white figs. We have this relatively often. B'nai shikma is what they call a fig of a sycamore tree. I want you to know that you always learn about the produce of a sycamore tree. Many times, at least when you lose the art scroll, he says fig. It's actually called a sycamore fig tree. It's a certain type of fig that grows on a sycamore. You see the word. Noivlois hatamara is a certain inferior type of date. It's a date. Noivel means that it falls off the tree, which means that it never fully ripens on the tree. And I want you to know there are certain fruits that are that way, like an avocado, for example. But here, an avocado, they're all that way, at least to my knowledge. Dates, no, most dates, the dates of Eretz Yisrael, they're Gan Eden, Zovas, Cholav, Dvash, it's Dvash Tamarim. Certain dates were not that way. They were very inferior. Even when you took them on now, after you took them off the tree, you put them in a bag, in a brown bag. Everyone has their segulas, how to make it right. But it was lechatchila, not considered something that chashuv. Hagufnin is fennel. That's already a word in English. Again, if you don't know what it is, join the club. But hanitzvah is caper. We have a lot in Bavli. You know what a caper tree is called? Slaf. Remember that, Danny, from Masechta Brachas, right? Mendel, we had, but with all the allen of the tzlaf and the peta and the berry of the tzlaf. So tzlaf is. You don't know what fennel is, Rabbi? I'm saying that, yes, Danny, I own it. Yeah.
You got to go to Jonathan's house. You'll have plenty of fennel.
I have to go to Jonathan's house. Okay, but now, okay. So you had shisin, rimin, uzradim, b'nai shuach, b'nai shikma, noivelas atamara, gufna nitzvah. We had 8 items. Now, guys, Yehuda means in where Edo Cohen just bought a big property over there. In Yehuda, Judea. So here, now, there's 2 ways of learning this. So he's going to give 3 items. That ha'oig, guys, oig, not oig malach habashim metan ayin, oig metan aleph, is called a tanner sumac. It's a little tree whose leaves were used for tanning hides. And on that tree, there were certain red berries, and that's the oig that the Mishnah is referring to. And in Yehuda, they were uncultivated. That means, in contrast with the Galil, in contrast with Evel Hayardim, there people gave more chashivas to it. In Yehuda, the oig was considered very insignificant. Chometz, which is usually hefker, I want to say it like this: chometz made out of wine. This is the way they explain it. Listen to these words, guys. During the times of the Beis Hamikdash, even Bisman Bayisheni, which was after which the Mishnah was written, there was a certain bracha on the grapes of Yehuda exclusively that they did not turn into vinegar. So what they would do is that normally you would have chometz from soured wine. In Yehuda, the wine did not sour. When you buy a bottle of wine today and it tastes like chometz, they'll tell you it's not. They're not going to give you it's not because it comes from Yehuda. It's perfect. So what do you do? So there's something called temed that we also learned in Masechta Barachas together. Temed is that after they squeezed all the wine out, they would take the grape seeds and they would have it soaked in water. And that's already a very, very interesting. It's not even wine. It's called temed. And temed would turn into vinegar. So that's the chometz that we're talking about. In other words, it's a product that's very inferior. And the final is coriander, hakusbar. So you have the first 8 are Hefker and Galil. Now many understand that those 8 were cultivated in Yehuda. And then in Yehuda, these 3 are Hakalin. But these 3 in Galil are not Kalin. One thing is clear in the Mishnah, according to all of the Mefarshim, that these 3 are only to be lenient in these 3 only in Yehuda. Question is, what about the first 8? So some understand it flip-flops back and forth, twists. First 8 are in Galil and not the 3, and in Yehuda it's only these 3 and not those 8. Okay, be that as it may. Ad kan the Tanakama. Now the Tana Rabbi Yehuda Oimer like this. Kol hashisin was that wild figs, right? Kol Hashis and Peturois, but there is an exception. The Tanakama doesn't subscribe to the exception. Rabbi Yehuda subscribes to the exception. What is that exception? Chutz min hadifra. Difra is a tree that produces twice a year. It's amazing, huh? And that is considered more chashuv. Same thing. Kol harimin jujubs, the one that gave out a picture. They are exempt, but there is an exception. Chutz min shikmoina. Shikmoina is the name of a place near Haifa. And chol b'nai shikma peturois. Chutz min ha-mesu tafois. There are certain types of these, certain type of fig that they actually begin to crack while they are on the tree, and that is considered something more choshev according to Rabbi Yehuda. Ubemela, it doesn't have this leniency when you buy them from the Amoritz. You have to do to it what you do with all other produce of the mind. That's the Mishnah. Now we're going to have in the Gemara the machlokas between Rabbi Yechanan and Ish Lakish, like we spoke out. And let me just say the words by heart. According to Rabbi Yochanan, the reason why we are lenient in all of the items that are mentioned in the Mishnah is because we presume these items to be hefker. By the way, that would mean that if I know that they were cultivated, I happen to know, then they are included. That will be the flip side of the coin of Rabbi Yochanan. We presume them to be hefker would also mean that it's not only concerning the Mai, even if it's not the Mai. That's Rabbi Yechon. We'll read it inside. Resh Lakish holds.
If Tevel is hefker?
If Tevel is hefker, like Shvi is, there's no din, it's not called Tevel.
No din ma'asus.
Very good. Resh Lakish understands our Mishnah. It's that the leniency is only benegei the Mai because there is a presumption that the Amoritz won't be stingy or be lax because he's dealing with something that to begin with is insignificant for him because it's garnished. People don't cultivate it. It's very cheap. People don't care if it gets off. People don't care to gather it always. Shlem is looking at me. It's a big nafkamina.
What's cultivated?
Cultivated means that you make an effort. Cultivated is what you do to your Friday night meal. You don't just do it stam. You put koyach into it, you tend the trees, you take out the weeds. Cultivating is what many people do with their dogs over here. First taste. They don't own a dog. Okay, no, they have to cultivate it. Cultivated is your mashkia a koyach into it, and energy and concern and care, versus when you have a product that's not so significant, you let it be. It was a sycamore. It happened to be there. If it's there, I'm going to pick it. But, okay. Says the Gemara. Now, we're going to just say at the end of the year how this really fits something ironic between the tzaddik and the Baal Tshuva. We'll get there in a moment. Now, why are we lenient? Listen to these words, and then you'll see how we touch the words in the we'll learn the Marafolda. We didn't learn the Marafolda yet. And therefore, this is a type, very good. This is a type of produce that is exempt from tithing, and that's why Manu, Oisan, Chachamim, they counted them in our Mishnah. Says the Marafulda. What is Rabbi Yechanan really saying? We say these words by heart, right? The top Marafulda. The hefker part of Lefika, guys, listen. Bein demai, bein vadai. That's the key. Rabbi Yechanan is saying something that brings a big leniency and a big stringency. The leniency is that Rabbi Yechanan's understanding of the Mishnah would mean that the Mishnah is not only talking about the Mai. What is it Bechal doing in Masechtas the Mai? The Gemara is going to ask on him. It's not a din in the Mai. It should be a din in Maiseres. It's also the Mai. Like I mentioned, there will be a big chumrah according to Rabbi Yechanan. If the only reason why the Chachamim were lenient is because it's a presumption. It's a presumption that it's Mina Hefker. If you know it's not Mina Hefker, we're shleima. Because you know that this owner does care about this type of fig. He cultivates them. Then you're going to be chayiv. Okay. However, Reish Lakish argues, and he says, no, that our Mishnah and the leniency is not bigger than the din of the Mai. It's only for the case of the Mai. It's not about it being hefked. It's a presumption. Yeah, Rabbi Blount, it's a presumption that the owner, the Amoritz, won't be reluctant by not separating everything. He won't care. you get. How does the whole fundraising work? The rabbi hatasach brachas to give it. He gives a bracha because he could. He can give a bracha, and the guy who has a lot of money gives a few dollars because he could. It's people are reluctant on that which is limited. If you have something that is either unlimited or for you insignificant, which makes it unlimited beyond what you need, it's easier to part from it. That's what it is. The Amaretz doesn't care enough to have this. Oh my God! Okay, I'm only going to do a Truma Gedolah. They weren't Amaratzim, like Amaratzim. They knew you have all this. They didn't find it significant, so they don't care. Abel Vadai, unlike Rabbi Yechanan, says Reish Lakish, if we're not buying it from an Amaretz, we're buying it from a farmer it was not. You're buying it from off the tree. You're picking it off the tree. Then, in the case where you are allowed, then over there you're going to be chayiv to give it. Go on.
So according to this dispute, we're saying that Rabbi Yechanan is more makel.
More makel and more machmed. More machmed because that ain't something. The flip side of Rabbi Yechanan is all of this is presumptions. The presumptions are that if you know Rabbi Yechanan that it was not high, if you know that it's not hefker.
So that it's not hefker.
Not hefker. How do I know that? Because the owner cultivated that field. You see, the owner is mashkiach koich in that field. Then you have to tithe the badai and the demai from it. And according to the Shlakish, even if the owner is cultivating the field, even there, by demai, we would still be lenient. It would still remain lenient. The Gemara is going to say, let's read it inside. Rabbi Yechanan Amar. Now, words that Mara Fulda, even though Rabbi Yechanan did not say it originally, he took it from the Gemara. Rabbi Yechanan Amar loy shanya bein demai bein badai. Guys, Rabbi Blano, one thing, don't get confused. We're speaking about someone who doesn't know for sure if they are hefker or not. In other words, the Mishnah is saying that this is a product, whether you are in Golol, these products, in Yehuda, the other products, you presume they are hefker. And therefore, they don't have to be tithed at all. And therefore, of course, also from the Amaretz. The question is, if that's the case, why are we opening up Masechtas Demai with this? Leishanu elo Demai? Does that not imply that if it's Vadai Chayovim, that's what this implies? Hekalin, right? What are the words of the Mishnah? Shebedemai. The words don't fit. Not Hakalin Shebedemai. Hakalin. Hakalin and B'maisris. And Enochanami, the Gemara says that, yes, but no, it's not a kash. Amar Rabbi, we said already that could be Rabbi, that Lafi, Shebechol, Makim, Makim, Lechashiv, Elodemai, that our Masechta is primarily focusing on the laws of Demai. All of the next Mishnayos will be about Demai. So he's going to include this in Demai. But actually, Rabbi Yechanan stands his ground. This din isn't only about Demai. Don't forget, the kasha is not that you're wrong by Demai. You're right by Demai. Why are you limited by Demai? The Gemara says, because that's the way Rabbi puts together the Mishnayos. He's focusing on laws of Demai. This also happens to be items in which, even if you buy from the Amaretz, you don't have to do anything. You don't do anything. So he included it over here, but it's not only, this Mishnah is actually greater than the dinam of Demai. Now, that we didn't refute Rabbi Yechanan, says the Gemara, that Masnisa Mishayel Rabbi Yechanan. How is that? Not our Mishnah, guys. This Mishnah we're going to have in our pagination on the above Amid base. It's a later Mishnah in this paper. It says in the Mishnah that Mikiziv, I know that certain letters are interchangeable. Kiziv is how it's spelled in the Talmud Bavli. In the Yerushalmi, they spelled it with the Gimel. And that just enlightens how you're supposed to pronounce it. Probably a Gimel. But anyways, this is a general din, which is produce of Eretz Yisrael has to be tithed. These are the mitzvahs hatuluyos ba'aretz. If you are outside Eretz Yisrael, then you don't have to tithe it. Certainly not midoiraisa. What are the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael? So that's going to be a topic that we'll get to. We already spoke about it many times. There was the Oil of Mitzrayim, the conquest of Yehoshua. And then there was Kedusha Rishoina, Kitchel Shata Chevra. Remember the words, V'loy Kitchel Asad Lavi. Yerushalmi is a separate parsha, but would speak about Kedusha's Eretz Yisrael. Why is that? Because something that you make holy through conquest, if Goyim, sadly, historically, they conquered it from us, the conquest gave Kedusha, the opposite conquest removed the Kedusha. Masha Enkein Oila Bavel, which is what happened under the leadership of Yerushua when we settled the land. It wasn't in a way of kibush. There was no opposition. The powers that the rulers of the time, which were sitting in Persia, they did it with their consent. So therefore, we were koine it, or we imbued it again with kedusha through settling, and that was never taken away from us. Even though there was a Roman conquest, but conquest cannot be mafkia, the kedusha that was imbued through settling without conquest, which is even more powerful. Ubamela from Bisman Bayesheni, from Keziv, Ulahalam Keziv was the northern, western, upper boundary of Israel. It was higher than Haifa. So Keziv Ulahalam, Bein Demai, Bein Vadai. 1 second. The Mishnah says that Keziv Ulamayla, you don't have to separate what? What will you say? You don't have to separate the Mai? No. When the Mishnah later is speaking about this boundary of Israel, even though it's a Masechtas the Mai, we know it's not only about the Mai, because biblically, any land outside the Kedusha, that is Israel, is exempt from ISIS. So just like we see clearly, the Gemara says that even though we're learning Masechtas the Mai, there can be a Mishnah that can be talking about a law that affects the Mai, but it's not exclusive to the Mai. Is that not, whether it's a suffix, whether it's a Vadai? Yes, it is. Doesn't matter. Rabbi still put it in Masechtas Demai. Ufachi here also. Leishanya, very good proof. Bein Demai, Bein Vadai. Now we have another few minutes. You know what? We can stop over here. Let's stop over here. I just want to say like this. When I get Rabbi Yechon Shlokish, it comes out like this: that who has a greater trust to the Amoritz? Who trusts the Amoritz more between Rabbi Yechon and Shlokish? Rabbi Yechon is not trusting the Amoritz. Rabbi Yechanan is not saying that there is a leniency because we trust the Amoritz. Rabbi Yechanan is saying is that we are lenient because this is a product that's completely exempt. The Shlokish is saying something much greater. He's saying the product is not exempt, but he limits our understanding of the Chazal's, Bizman Yechanan Kan Gadol's, mistrust on the Amoritz. Yeah, we didn't trust him fully, but let's limit that. We didn't trust him fully. If he senses that there's going to be a loss of money, together with the fact that he was not so learned, together with the fact that he didn't take it that serious, you put all that shalom together, sadly you have someone who's behaving not the way it should be. But the moment this person, in this case, doesn't find that valuable, Resh Lakish trusts more the Amoritz. And that's the difference between a tzaddik and a Baal Tshuva. In other words, a tzaddik cannot relate to the Baal Tshuva, who previously had a weakness. The tzaddik sees the Baal Tshuva, someone that in the past had a weakness. Once you have a weakness, how do you trust the person who has a weakness? The Shlakish, because of him being in that world, he saw that even the person with the weakness doesn't mean that he's a Rasha Gomer in every single case. He sees, the Shlakish sees more virtue in the Amoritz, more than Rabbi Yechon, which is amazing. And I think that's the way it works with the Baal Tshuva. Datke, because he was there, he has a greater understanding of where the there is. He doesn't just say, you're Amoritz, you're out. He is more inclusive.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the meaning that it says, Mashiach Asal Sava Sadekai B'tiyufta. Many of my modern explained that the unique koyach of Mashiach is that he's going to inspire the tzaddikim to be Baal Tshuva. The question is, how can you inspire a tzaddik to be a Baal Tshuva if the tzaddik never sinned? Maybe it's this attitude. The attitude that the Jewish people have today, that even people that are not yet shomer mitzvahs, we don't say, they don't keep anything. Okay. Even such a Jew, we already come with an attitude, they keep almost everything. All they need to do is they have to understand something a little bit better. The attitude that you have when you make Baal Tshuva is an attitude like Rabbi Shlakish, which allows them to do Tshuva. Instead of being completely looked down at, that they don't do that. And if there's a leniency, it's not because of them. We don't trust them. It's because the product is valueless. No, it's not like that.
Now,